Ladies and gentlemen, may I present Datuk Lee with his welcome remarks.
Dear IY valued partners, stakeholders, and colleagues, climate change is a pressing global issue that affects the future of our children. In 2019, IY introduced our group-wide Climate Change Action Initiative. And last year, we set a group-wide target to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2040. While we continue to encourage our operations to reduce their carbon footprint and our employees to practice a sustainable lifestyle, the theme for this year's IOI Earth Month campaign, Protecting Our Future Together, calls for collective action to dedicate our time and energy towards solving the climate crisis and protecting Mother Nature for our future generation. In conjunction with IOI Earth Month campaign and in line with our Climate Change Action Initiative, we have organized this panel discussion to share with you IOI's pathway to net zero. We hope that this panel discussion will create awareness and promote transparency among our stakeholders about our net zero journey. I believe we can all do more on climate change through innovation as well as improve efficiency in our processes and systems throughout our operations and supply chain. At IOI, to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030 as a medium-term target, we have set progressive steps to reduce our Scope 1 and 2 emissions by adopting the 7 R's of circularity and practicing both precision and regenerative agriculture. We would like to collaborate more with our valued partners and stakeholders to further reduce the occurrence of Scope 3 emissions and achieve net zero emissions by the year 2040. I'm also pleased to announce IOI's formal commitment to the Science-Based Targets Initiative for the category of forests, land and agriculture, or in short, SBTi flag. Under this initiative, the participating companies have to commit to zero deforestation, as well as develop transparent and verifiable science-based emissions reduction targets in line with the latest climate science. I look forward to the success of this panel discussion and hope it will inspire and empower all of us to make a real impact in reducing our carbon footprint and combating climate change. Let us protect our future together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Next up, it's our panel discussions on IOI's pathway to net zero. This session will be moderated by Mr. Faisal Parish, who is the Director of Global Environment Center, or GEC. GEC has been our value partner since 2016 and is a specialist firm in peat, high conservation value, and various conservation matters. We have partnered with them in many projects, including the South Ketapang Landscape Initiative in Indonesia and a multi-stakeholder project involving the orang asli or indigenous community who are located adjacent to our operating estate at Bukit Lilau in Malaysia. Without further ado, let me hand over to Mr. Faisal.
Thank you very much, and welcome again to all the participants, both here at the IOI HQ and online. Welcome to this panel discussion on IOI's pathway to net zero. this initiative on Pathway to Net Zero is extremely timely. As some of you may know, yesterday, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released its latest report on the future prediction for the impact of climate change. And the main outline of the report is quite pessimistic, that there is a very narrow and closing window for all of us to change behavior, action, and practice globally to reduce climate change and keep the temperature on this planet to a minimum increase of 1.5 degrees. Unless collectively all organizations, people, and governments around the world take coordinated action, we will not reach that target, and we may be faced with one runaway global climate change, which will have disastrous consequences for everyone living on this planet. So very lucky to have today with us a broad panel of speakers from the IOI group who are going to explain different aspects and the different steps and potential that is already being taken by the IOI group, and we hope in future will continue to be taken within IOI and also by our suppliers and supply chain partners. So let me first introduce the panel member. To my left, Dr. 𝐍𝐞𝐭-𝐙𝐞, the Group Head of Sustainability of IOI. Secondly, to her immediate left is Peter Finch, the CEO for Palm Wood Initiative, which is looking at innovative ways to use what was previously considered a waste product from the palm industry and turning it into value-added product, a good example of circular supply chain. Also with us here in the IOI headquarters is Mr. Amir Hafiz, who's the lead for strategy within IOI Group. Joining us online, we have Mr. Shyam Lakshmanan, who is the General Manager of IOI Refinery, and Mr. Chong Wai Tak, the Head of Research and Sustainability of IOI Oleochemical Group. I hope that between the panel members, we will be able to elaborate a lot on the initiative and work undertaken by IOI and what IOI envisages over the next 17 years to 2040. To start off the discussion and to give an overview, let me ask Dr. 𝐍𝐞𝐭-𝐙𝐞 to give her overall presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Faisal, for that kind introduction. Again, thank you everyone for attending this, both physically and virtually. Really appreciate your commitment towards IOI's pathway to net zero. I thought I would start with the IOI Corporation corporate sustainability, just to give you a sort of an overview of how we view sustainability within IOI. To begin with, we have our sustainability vision, which is very specifically talking about committing to protect, rehabilitate, and preserve the environment that we live in, and then followed by ensuring economic, social well-being of our employee and our communities. And finally, also looking at leading and innovating, as well as embedding sustainability practices within the business. Our approach to sustainability specifically involves engagement with stakeholders, and this is where we would like to share with you our journey towards net zero. Just to give you an overall, we adopt 6 of the UN SDG out of the 17. These are the ones that are most relevant to our operation and to our businesses. Going forward, I would like to share with you our IOI sustainability agricultural approach. And as you can see, this overall ESG commitment that we have includes matters involving climate change, biodiversity, and meeting rising demand of our nutrition, as well as meeting the net zero target that we have committed to. Looking at our climate change action initiative, we have three pledge that we would like to undertake. The first part is, of course, sustainability. And this means taking actions on any of the issues raised and making it known that the issues are being addressed. And this is really important. No greenwashing, being transparent about our key decisions and reasons behind what are the issues that we are being faced, and not being swept away or being or illustrating more than what we do. Engagement, and this is listening to our stakeholders, having awareness of the arguments or demands or the issues when making any key decisions. So this is our three major pledge that we undertake in our climate change action initiative. Looking at our climate change action initiative, this is very much in line with our TCFD, or Task Force for Climate Related Financial Disclosure. And the first part of TCFD is governance. Governance is extremely important to ensure that our decisions, roles, and responsibility, these are all being transparently shared, and accountability is up front and center. We have the board together with the management being responsible for all governance related to sustainability, and this is further narrowed down towards the strategic management of material sustainability matters, which is driven by the senior management. And finally, we have also built up a working group for our climate change action initiative, and this is specifically to track and document financial investments required in any projects related to our reduction or removal of the GHG emission. So as you can see, governance is up front and center, and it takes center stage simply because we wanted to make sure that the second pledge that we have of greenwashing is being addressed. In terms of looking at our second part of TCFD pillar, which is commitment and strategy, we have committed to reduce our climate change impact by setting long-term targets to reduce our GHG emission. We want to promote climate action plan and practices through innovation, improve efficiency, and support actions throughout the operations. And finally, to increase the resilience of our business by managing our risks and opportunities and forecasting climate scenarios for climate impact valuation, and incorporating our 7 R's of circularity that our group managing director have mentioned before. In looking at the further alignment of our strategy, the 7 R's of circularity includes the first part, which is rethink. And this is especially important because this takes our whole company into having a mindset that climate change is imperative to our business. Precision agriculture and regenerative agriculture are part and parcel of our operation, because we realize that in precision agriculture and regenerative agriculture, it's one of the ways in which we can address the risks that we are faced by climate change. These are very specific metrics and targets, which is part of the alignment of TCFD. And as you can see, for short-term, the slide shows the short-term, our short-term target, which is 40% by 2025. I'm sorry, there's a mistake there. 40% by 2025, and you can see that based on the baseline in 2021, we have actually met the target of 28.2%. As opposed to a 28% target. And you can see that these are the three breakdowns of some of the emission, out of which plantation has the highest emission. This is on the right-hand side of the slide. And while the reduction and the removal is on the left-hand side of the slides. You can see the green bars, and those are the activities that are helping to reduce and meet our 28.2% target. So previously, Datuk Lee has mentioned that we are now committed to SBTi flag. Just to show the requirements, one of the requirements for the SBTi flag is the require for zero deforestation commitment. We have included all land use change from 1995 based on the 2015 baseline. We have also met the requirement for a moratorium by having a moratorium on no deforestation, no planting, no new planting on peat, and no social exploitation since 2016. And the third requirement that we have, we are committed to NDPE as well as zero burning from 2014. So all the requirements of SBTi flag has been met, and as such, this is the final part where we look into our metrics and targets, and this contributes to our net zero target, where you can see that in the short term, we are looking to reduce 40% of our emission for scopes 1 and 2 by 2025, a medium term of by 2030 of being carbon neutral for scopes 1 and 2. And this is via further innovation and rehabilitation, as well as sequestration activities, which will include reforestation, and a long-term commitment by 2040, which will cover scope 3, and this of course includes our supply chain. Finally, on our net zero journey, I would like to look into managing risks and opportunities, which is in alignment with the last pillar of TCFD. The GHG emission reduction, which includes sequestration commitment, as well as increasing productivity, managing GHG emissions from supply chain, and adoption and application of technologies and new innovation. I will go very quickly for the next few slides. We have some best practices that we are undertaking, like protection of set aside forested areas, no deforestation and protection of peatlands, looking into implementation of waste management, and this is very much involved with circular economy, and one of our speakers will specifically talk on a byproduct on palm wood, regenerative agriculture to enhance soil biodiversity, and monitoring the operations for potential source of GHG emissions, and this can be highlighted further by both refinery and oleochemical. Looking into some of the adoption of technologies and innovation, we are using, of course, energy efficiency by using green technology, utilization of chemical-free technology, adoption of renewable energy, methane capture, and solar and cogeneration power. And finally, looking at managing our supply chain. And this is the part in which we would like to share with our audiences on some of the issues, some of the practices that we are having. The first part, of course, is to create awareness and capacity building for our suppliers to understand our journey and to help them along so that we both can protect the future together. So I will end this now, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Serena, for a very informative presentation, and ending up on the key point that we need to bring all the suppliers along with the journey. So hopefully those online suppliers, please, if you have any comments or questions, please put them into the chat function on the online, and we will come back to it after the presentations. So for our second presentation is one of our online panel members, Mr. Syam Laksamanam from the IOI refinery, who will share with us some of the experiences and approaches addressing climate change through the refinery process. The floor is yours, Mr. Syam.
Thank you, Faisal. This is a view of our refinery complex in Sandakan. In the foreground, you can see water catchment ponds. We treat our own water from surface runoff. There are hills beside us, and we maintain a lot of greenery within our complex. Next slide, please. Okay, here I've tried to capture what Dato was talking about, the circularity within the palm oil industry. On the left, top left-hand corner, you will see the plantations and the fresh fruit bunches being harvested. These are then sent to the mills on the right-hand side. In the mills, we get fruit palm oil and palm kernel being produced, and these are sent to the refinery for processing. The free fruit bunches, after the fruits have been removed, become empty fruit bunches. These are chopped in the mills and then supplied for biomass boilers as fuel. Now, in the mill process as well, a lot of effluent is generated. That effluent is treated to generate methane. Now, that methane is then used to generate steam as well as green energy that is sufficient to power the whole mill. Where there is a grid nearby, many companies also supply the energy back to the grid. And if there isn't energy or grid nearby, the excess methane can be bottled and sold. In the refinery, which is on the top right-hand corner, in the kernel crushing plants, the palm kernel is crushed and crude palm kernel oil is extracted. So crude palm oil and crude palm kernel oil are fed to the refinery, which is in the middle center, bottom row. The refinery refines the product using a processing aid called bleaching earth. The bleaching earth helps to remove much of the impurities contained within the crude palm oil. And that bleaching earth is disposed as spent bleaching earth. That spent bleaching earth is collected by specialist companies that extract the oil as spent bleaching earth oil. This doesn't end up in the food supply chain. It is used for industrial purposes. And the bleaching earth that has the oil extracted from it is now known as de-oiled bleaching earth, or DOBE. That DOBE or DOBE is supplied back to the estates as soil conditioner and also as a fertilizing aid because it has very high adsorptive properties. In the refinery, again, you'll see there is effluent being generated. That effluent is treated in an aerobic effluent treatment plant, and the water is recirculated back to the refinery. This is a closed loop. There's no effluent leaving this plant at all. It's completely recycled within the process. Now, remember I mentioned that the chopped EFB is sent to biomass boilers. We run a biomass boiler in our complex. So the chopped EFB and some palm kernel shell is supplied to our biomass boiler, which generates all the steam and all the energy required to power the refinery and its complex as well. And the EFB, which is used as fuel in the biomass boiler, becomes boiler ash. And this boiler ash has a very high potassium content. That potassium-rich ash also is supplied back to the estate. So you can see there's a lot of circularity within the industry. Next slide, please. Now, some of the initiatives we've done in our company I've captured in pictures here. Let me explain. From the top left-hand corner is CPO washing. We're one of the first refineries in the country to put up a CPO washing plant, as well as design the plant ourselves. It has helped to reduce utilities consumption. We've also got a very intricate condensate recovery system in our plant. And this condensate is now recovered, even steam vapor that is, you can see in the middle picture here, is now also recovered, and the heat is then used to melt stearin to replace steam. We used steam before, we now use hot water and condensate. So we have an intricate system within the plant to reduce our steam consumption. It's been very successful. The bottom right-hand corner, you will see a cooling tower, which is a very high efficiency cooling tower, which we've installed recently, which has managed to reduce our electricity consumption significantly for that plant. Now, after this has succeeded, we are also going to do it for many of our other refinery and fractionation plants as well. On top of that, we also have done projects in our kernel crushing plant to reduce the consumption of metal. We insert inserts, what we call inserts, so that the worms and collars have prolonged life. We are reducing the consumption of metal that would have ended up in the scrap yard. And as I mentioned earlier, we also treat our effluent water and it's totally recycled. Next, please. On the top left-hand corner, you will see our tank farm and the plant in the background. This is totally illuminated with LED lighting now. The middle picture is a high-efficiency centrifugal chiller that we've installed recently to replace our older units using the older refrigerants. These are the more environment-friendly refrigerants. The set of pictures on the right-hand side are showing you our rainwater harvesting. There's no additional energy utilized. Many of the tall roofs, we collect all rainwater and is channeled by gravity back to the ponds, which you can see in the lower pictures. On the bottom left-hand corner, you will see where we've started using our own product, which is Olean, as a biolubricant. It has been running now for more than a year, and we're having very, very good results with this lubricant. even beating that from mineral oil and from food grade lubricants. Next, please. We've also started mechanizing in our kernel crushing plant. The kernel crushing plant is a very mechanical process. Now, these are screen grabs that tell the operator what's happening in the plant. These are figures showing the amount of product, raw material being crushed, as well as the yield, so they can see the performance of the plant on a daily basis or the to-date figure. Next, please. This is another screen grab showing you the operation of the various kernel crushing presses in the plant. And it's made to be easily understood. The green region shows that the motors are running properly, or the press is running properly. If the needle is on the red zone, it will indicate to the operator that it is not running well and it requires action. Now, we've gone another step further, which is that if he doesn't respond within 15 minutes, the press will shut down and an alarm will sound. So he has to go and take action. So these are steps we've taken to try and mechanize and automate a plant that has been a purely mechanical plant. Next, please. We've run many biomass boilers in our complex before, and biomass from palm is a very difficult fuel to handle. And having experienced this, we designed and put in a new boiler in 2019, incorporating many ideas that we had for improving the performance of the boiler. It has managed to avoid much of the bridging problem that we had before, choking, and also we are able to handle higher moisture fiber with this boiler. It is made as a single pass configuration to reduce pressure drop, and we've incorporated, in addition to having steam soot blowers using superheated steam, we've also incorporated shockwave soot blasters in order to prolong the operating life of the boiler before we have to shut it down for cleaning. The economizers that you see in the picture are heat pipe economizers, which are also an innovation and prolongs the life of the heat exchangers in service. This is new as well, the electrostatic precipitator that we put in to comply with DOE regulations. Now, another innovative thing that we did is on the exhaust ducting, we also took tapping to feed hot air back to the drying zone in the furnace. This is what has helped us handle fiber with even higher moisture. Next slide, please. Now, this shows you what we managed to achieve. You'll see the feed water temperature in the boiler because the economizers, if you look at the rightmost column, now it's gone up to 260 degrees from where it was previously. We're using much less shell compared to what we were using previously. There's better fuel combustion efficiency. You can see here we can handle moisture of 55% in the fuel. And the amount of steam being generated has also increased, which means even though we are using biomass, the amount of carbon dioxide being generated from this has also reduced because the same amount of fuel can now generate more steam. So we use less fuel as well. You can see we've also used lower superheated steam temperature so that the metals can actually last longer. And recently, we just shut down the boiler for the annual shutdown. And at that point in time, we were able to run it for a campaign run of 110 plus days. We could have gone longer, but we shut down because we had the statutory inspections to be carried out. Compared to what it was before, which is 30 days and 45 days, this is a significant improvement. Next, please. Okay, you'll see that we generate power from this. And after we commissioned in 2019, we had some teething problems in 2020. And you see 2021, we've already generated 20 million kilowatt hours. As at 8 months of this financial year, we've already generated the same amount. And we expect to hit 30 million kilowatt hours of green energy by the end of this financial year. Next, please. I mentioned earlier that the methane, if there's no grid nearby, it can be used for other purposes. And you'll notice that in Sabah, it is already being done. You have tankers, road tankers that are already being powered purely by methane. This is biomethane. And you can see there's a CPO truck as well as a palm kernel trailer. So the products are delivered to the mills in Sabah, not using any diesel. Next, please. That you'll see what we've tracked, as what Dr. Surina has shown. We have managed to reduce our emissions for the palm products, which is on the left-hand side, and the right-hand side is the lauric products, and all trending down. If you look at the center chart, at the bottom center, you'll see that where we set our baseline as in 2015 as 42 kilograms per ton of product. As at 2022, we've already achieved 29 kgs. And as at February 23, we've already hit our 2025 target, which is 23 kgs per ton. And our next target is 3031. We are not stopping. We are going to exceed this as well. We're going to go low as we can go. That is the commitment we have from our managing director, group managing director. Next, please. Now, I could have just told you all that and left it at that, but I wanted to share with you that we have won many awards because of the efforts that we put in here. The left-hand side, the first one is the Palm Oil Award for the vent economizer we put so that we could reduce our steam consumption. In 2018, we also participated in the National Energy Awards and we emerged as champions, and we were selected to represent Malaysia at the ASEAN level. We ended up as second runner-up. On the right, top right-hand corner is our MPOB award for the best kernel crushing plant. And you'll see a lot more awards that were very recent. The next one below it is the 2021 award that we won as champion for the cogeneration biomass. And you'll see that our lubricant also received high commendment, was highly commended by the 𝐈𝐬𝐈𝐬 Malaysia Awards. And on the left-hand side, you'll see the most recent awards we won at the National Energy Awards. We emerged as runner-up in 2022. Again, we were selected to represent Malaysia at ASEAN level, where we ended up as first runners-up. And we also had another submission for biomass. We ended up as winner at the ASEAN level. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cham, for very enlightening presentation on the efficiency improvements and greenhouse gas emission reductions achieved through the refinery sector. Our next presentation is by Mr. Chong Wai Tak, who will explain about the progress made in the oleochemical sector. You have 10 minutes, Mr. Chong. Thank you.
Thanks, Faisal, and good afternoon, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by sharing our approach from the oleochemical division, from the emission inventory to the emission scopes that we cover, and then later to the initiatives that has been carried out by the company to meet these targets, as well as before I close, I highlight to you some of the challenges and as well as our future plan for the oleochemical division. Yeah. Okay, next, please. So the oleochemical division has an inventory of GHG emission based on the entities in which we have financial control. So we are using the financial control approach. This includes all the manufacturing entities, basically the Malaysian and the German manufacturing units. We also cover our marketing and sales officers in US and Germany, including our care studios, shore tanks, as well as bulking installations, which we use to ship bulk vessel. Yeah. Okay, next, please. Now, this slide shows you the sources of emissions. Okay. Now, this includes, of course, scope 1, the stationary fuel. This is the natural gas diesel. We also use some bio-based fuel, and we account for the methane, nitrous oxide emissions, mobile fuels, okay, fugitive emissions, the hydrofluorocarbon, perfluorocarbon, refrigerant, and CO2-based fire retardant system. Items 5 to 7 is our basically our what do you call that? Scope 2, which is the electricity. Steam and high pressure air is basically being used by our German manufacturing sites. We also report our biogas as well as the biofuel CO2 emission. It's basically just to report as part of the requirement. Okay, next, please. Now for scope 3, we basically cover all the 8 categories of the upstream scope 3. So namely, the big ones are, of course, purchased goods. This category alone covers more than 50% of our scope 3 emission. The other big ones are, of course, the upstream transportation. And on the downstream side, we will have the only three categories, 9, 13, and 15. The others we have excluded because we are not into the into the customized customer products. We are basically basic oleochemicals and multiple users. So we have excluded item 10, 11, 12, and we do not have franchises, category 14. Okay, next, please. So you've heard from my colleague, Sham. So sometimes it's nice to hear the options that he has, but each business unit therefore have business division have different challenges. For oleochemicals, basically, as you can see from this chart, our emissions are heavily lopsided to scope 1. We have improved from a 70-30 ratio to now, I said improve. We have changed from 70-30 ratio to 90% scope 1 and only 10% scope 2. Now, I also like to put a note here that our scope 3 is actually more than almost 10-folds of our direct emissions. So the sum of scopes 1 and 2. Yeah. Okay, next, please. Now, our main strategies for GHG reduction includes the firstly, improving energy efficiency. So this is majorly driven by our cogeneration power plants, the combined heat and power plants in Prai and Pasir Gudang sites. So Mr. Sham shared in refinery, they are using a cogen based on biomass feed, but our cogen system is based on a natural gas feed. So indirectly, when we have this cogeneration plant, although the overall energy efficiency improves significantly, but then we are using natural gas as our feed. So this increases our scope 1 as well. Okay. Now, the other part is we have a structured system on effective energy management through the ISO 50001, the energy management system for our Malaysian site, and the EMAS, Eco Management and Audit Scheme system for our Germany plants. Now, these systems, along with our in-house energy efficiency teams, continue to spur our continual improvement in various energy recovery programs. So example, as I listed here, are vapor absorption chillers, heat recovery from the flue gas systems. Lastly, we are also aggressive to adopt renewable and green energy through our solar photovoltaic cells, as well as solar thermal projects in Malaysia. In Germany, we have fully adopted green energy from wind and hydro sources. This is further supplemented by the biogas energy from a biogas capture from our effluent treatment system. Of course, from there, then we get some savings from emissions as well. Okay. For scope 3, although we have many categories that we are manage the inventory, but the major ones are, of course, as I mentioned, purchased goods, upstream and downstream transportation. Collectively, they make up more than 80% of our scope 3 emissions. For this, we are working with our suppliers and related parties to reduce these emissions. So for example, IOI Group is working with RSPO and its stakeholder to improve the palm GHG to better capture the savings from the so-called age of palm, etc. Yeah. Next, please. Now, our near-term action plan includes the adoption of the ISO 14064. This is the corporate reporting and verification of GHG emissions. So this, we are actually going for scopes 1, 2, and scopes 3, but only limited to the 5 major categories. This is an important step that the company has taken to ensure the veracity of our GHG reporting to be in line with international requirements. Major sustainability projects planned include installation of a new cogeneration power plant. Okay, this is to further improve energy efficiency, and a substantial project for the expansion of our solar energy harvesting to boost green energy use. We have also begun to improve our Scope 3 reporting, basically to upgrade from the Quantis evaluator to basically a hybrid average data method. So this gives us a better accuracy of data and lower in most cases, and to facilitate us working with our vendors in the future to bring down the emissions. On the challenges in the near term, reduction of our direct emissions are basically limited options of viable energy options. This is especially true for Scope 1. We do not have access. Malaysia basically currently do not have access to hydrogen, whatever color of hydrogen that is. In Penang, or at least also in Germany, biomass is certainly not accessible. So this remains a challenge for us. However, we are optimistic that with commitment and advancement in technology, that our target for net zero is achievable. So the team will continually look at opportunities to improve internal processes and keep abreast with technology innovations for novel options to reduce the GHG. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chong, for the progress, but also the challenge and the reality in the oleochemical part of the business. Let us, for our fourth presenter, move to Mr. Peter Finch from Palmwood, who's going to talk about the innovative approach to look at circular economy options for the palm industry. Peter, please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to speak at this panel discussion on IOI's pathway to net zero. I would like to give you a small insight as to what we're doing at IOI Palmwood. We have set ourselves a target to create a sustainable business model for the utilization of oil palm trunks and turn them into an engineered product which can be substituted for timber products. So you may ask yourself, what does success look like? Okay, a little bit of a technical issue there, but never mind. Success is to produce a range of timber equivalent materials made from OPT. Currently, we have developed a product range that includes lumber core, block boards, 3-layer panels, glue laminated beams, cross-laminated timber, and specialty products such as acoustic panels. Material innovation is our ongoing goal. So, what motivates us? It is to develop a new source of sustainable raw materials. Due to deforestation and the depletion of the supply of sustainable timbers, Malaysia, Southeast Asia, and the world has a shortage of timber materials. It is also a need to fight climate change. As mentioned earlier, yesterday's publication of the UN report gives a very bleak picture on the issues facing the Earth and global climate change. We also need to create scalability of the business model so we can actually make a difference. Adding to that, we need to make profit with a purpose. This must be a viable business model. Sustainability matters, especially due to the challenges of deforestation and climate change. With regards to sustainability and scalability, Malaysia has approximately 5.8 million hectares of planted oil palms. This is equivalent to 800 million trees being replanted every 25 years, or the equivalent to 30 million OPTs available per year.
Sorry, another technical issue. Okay, in comparison, if we look at the forest plantations in Malaysia, we only have 0.12 million hectares. In terms of forest reserves, we have 4.35 million hectares. And for rubber plantations, we only have 0.8 million hectares. So we almost have an unlimited availability of OPT, and we can scale the business. Climate change is a real concern. So we're looking to repurpose biomass waste into materials which capture carbon. Currently, the OPT is left to rot in the field after replanting, and this generates carbon dioxide and methane as it decays. To replace normal, we also need to replace normal timbers to slow deforestation. Very relevant under the new EU deforestation regulations. We also need to reduce the carbon emissions by using renewable energy, such as biomass and solar. We also need to rethink how to produce high-performance materials sustainably. Biomass materials are not as energy-intensive as other materials, such as cement, steel, and plastics to produce. Another thing which is also unique to our palm wood is that we do not add any chemicals to our processing. So here is a simple overview of our carbon sequestration process. I think there's no need to go in too much detail, as Mr. Sham has shown. He also has a carbon footprint circular economy model. But what I can tell you is that we capture approximately 0.9 metric ton of CO2 per cubic meter of product produced. If we try to apply this to IOI as a group, we can see that the sustainability approach is very circular, and we can actually use everything that is produced by IOI in its plantations. So if we look at the production of fresh fruit bunches, we then convert that into crude palm oil. The waste can be used for cogeneration plants. We can harvest the OPT and turn this into palm wood. We can then capture the carbon as palm wood, and any waste can also be fed back into cogeneration plants. Here we see the circularity potential within the oil palm sector. We must, however, walk the talk, but we must also be self-sustaining. A sustainable business model cannot be dependent on subsidies and grants. Profit isn't a purpose, it's a result. So we have a goal to create value for our stakeholders, to make profit to sustain the business. The product must meet unfulfilled needs, but we must also maintain margins. In terms of people, we must respect everyone, all our stakeholders, including employees, customers, and other people that are involved in the process, and maintain equitable benefits for all. In terms of the planet, we must mandate sustainability and innovate cost opportunities. For the process, we must become climate positive and increase efficiencies. The idea is to scale the business to increase our positive impact for all stakeholders. If we summarize our strategic overview, it includes opportunities, risks, rewards, and mitigating actions. If we look at the opportunities, there is an underutilized or unutilized 20 million OPTs, oil palm trunks, replanted every year. There is also an acute shortage of timber material. So here is our opportunity. In terms of risk, this is the first commercial operation. So we do have a technology risk. There is also a risk in terms of the market acceptance, because this product is produced from oil palms. But in terms of reward, the reward is that this is a sustainable and scalable business. And in addition, this is additional revenue for our oil palm revenue streams. How do we mitigate these risks? We mitigate this by doing extensive ongoing R&D and changing the narrative on sustainability. To do this, we have to have clarity of purpose. Okay. So our clarity of purpose is to commercially start production of palm wood and then to remain at the forefront of creating valuable materials from oil palm waste. To be a catalyst in the regeneration of the timber industry. And this will be done for the benefit of the company, employees, community, and the environment. Thank you very much. So any questions, please, at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter, for your very good presentation and showing us innovative, out-of-the-box thinking about how circular economy in the oil palm industry can turn a waste product into a very valuable substitute for the products from our dwindling forests. So last but not least, let me introduce Mr. 𝐈𝐴 from IOI Strategy, who will be presenting to us some of the key experiences and challenges in relation to moving forward with the target pathway to net zero.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Faisal. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. So for my presentation, I'm going to start with this problem statement that we facing with what we call triple threat. This soaring population growth. So with that, we are looking at higher demand for food, energy, water, feed, fiber, and they are all climate sensitive resources. So talking about resources, we are now seeing diminishing resources because today, the way that we consume, we are consuming more than what the natural resources or the world or the earth can regenerate. So that means that looks like we're gonna need more than one earth, but we only have one earth. And if the world living in or consuming like the Americans, according to a report from this global footprint network, we're gonna need 5 Earth to basically fulfill the way that we consume now. So this is actually as the result of we take, we make, and we dispose. This is the linear economy. So therefore, circular economy is very, very important that we need to take it seriously. So, and thirdly, according to the economists here, that we are losing the war against climate change because of the growing demand for energy and growing use of fossil fuel. So we are in fact moving or going in the wrong direction. So now, with that in mind, the big question mark that we have now, how do we, or how the world going to meet this growing demand for goods, for food with fewer resources and in more sustainable way? So specifically for a company like us or for a palm oil company like us, how do we play a key role in meeting the growing demand for food in more sustainable and resource efficient way? So recall that we launched our 5-year strategic priorities in year 2020. So we have 5 strategic priorities, but I'm not going to go through all of them. But I just want to share 2 strategic priorities that we have, which will help to address the element of the triple threat.
So the first one is on strategic priority number 1, to increase our yield, which is crucial to improve yield coming from the existing land that we have to meet the growing demand for food. And secondly, on the strategic priority number 4, which is to increase non-CPO segment or circularity agenda of IOI, so that we are taking circularity seriously. And of course, to advance further in terms of increasing yield and also implement circularity, the key enabler will be innovation. We need to accelerate innovation. We need to accelerate technology adoption to support us in this aspiration. Okay. So as you know, palm oil currently is supplying about 35 to 40% of the global demand of vegetable oil, coming from only about 6 to 7% of land planted with vegetable oil. That is very significant efficiency in terms of land use resources. So we are very efficient. So we are actually currently 4 times more efficient than the nearest competitor, rapeseed. So now for IOI, we would like to improve in terms of the yield further. We believe there's still room that we can improve further in terms of our yield potential. And therefore, we have this number 1 strategic priority to increase our yield further from our existing land that we have. So our target is to increase by 15% by 2024. So these are the initiatives that we have in place in terms of the improved planting material. We have a target to utilize elite cloner material of about 50% in our replanting, and also implement the mechanization to improve efficiency. As you know that we face with labor shortage coming from recent pandemic. So we have started to implement to improve our labor efficiency. Previously, 1 labor can cover about 8 hectares. Now we are looking at 1 labor can cover about 12 hectares with the mechanization that we have. And also implement good agriculture management practices and ensure that we have a good or balanced nutrient approach with regards to our fertilizer program, and adopt digital tools to improve our efficiency in our operation, and of course implement sustainable practices, which is already at the heart of everything we do here, such as in terms of methane capture, our policy on NDPE, using natural predators such as barn owl or Taito alba, the scientific name for that, in our pest management. So according to a study by comparative life cycle assessment, we found that RSPO CPO on average emission factor 35% lower compared to conventional palm oil. So this is very important in our journey to net zero. So in a nutshell, high yield and also sustainable palm oil will be critical to produce more to feed the growing population, and also to do more with less land and avoid future deforestation and also expansion into new areas. And of course, sustainable palm oil is important in giving us lower emission. So this is a very important solution for pathway to net zero and sustainable future. Okay, so earlier we talked about we take, we make, and dispose. So now we want to use, reuse, repurpose what the resources that are already in the economy, so that we can produce new products. So in the sector now, in Malaysia, the palm oil industry produce about 100 million tons of biomass every year. So this is a huge amount of biomass, all resources that we can repurpose. So potential usage of biomass or palm oil biomass, we have biofuel to potentially to replace fossil fuel. And also we are looking at potentially biofertilizer and soil conditioner to reduce chemical fertilizer, and also biomaterial to reduce usage of fossil feedstock and other carbon sensitive resources, and also biochemical. So at IOI, our strategic priority number 4 to increase the non-CPO segment or circular economy. So we aim to convert or repurpose this waste and palm biomass into value-added product. So the existing projects that we already have, as shared by Peter earlier, converting OPT into palm wood, and also we are capturing methane to generate biogas to power our mill. And currently we are also exploring stage to utilize our other biomass such as EFP into other value-added products such as pulp and paper, biofertilizer, and also soil conditioner. We are also exploring to use our pome for biofertilizer. So this is our clear commitment towards circularity. So in a nutshell, this is very important in terms of using or reusing the existing resources that we already have in the system. And key enabler to this effort actually innovation and technology. So according to this report, that by 2050, half of the required emission reduction will come from new technology. So for us, we need to work with others to accelerate innovation and also technology adoption. So we are adopting what we call open innovation, where we cultivate or nurture relationship with the innovation ecosystem, such as the likes of NTRS, Meranti, University Research Institute, and startups, as well as solution providers, so that we provide them or share our challenges, and then we provide opportunities for them to test and validate their solution at our facility or our site. So we have started to test and even started to adopt some of the new technologies such as AI vision or cognitive technology in our operation. Okay, with that, thank you.
Thank you very much, Amir, for that introduction on the innovations being developed by IOI in the both the CPO and the non-CPO part of the business. So now let us move on to the next segment of today's panel, and that is to look at the various questions that have been sent by the audience. Audience members online, please do keep on sending. We have received quite a few, but please put your questions into the chat or Q&A function and the online mechanism, and then we will be answering them. We already have about 20 questions, and only about 15 minutes, so we're not going to be able to deal with everything, but please keep the questions coming. And then even after the session, if there are unanswered questions, we will get the panel members to respond, and then we will include that in the report. Also, those here in the room physically, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. But I'll start off with a question we've received online, and this is for Serena. And this is about the challenges that may be faced for Scope 3. So Scope 3 are the emissions from the supply chain, and that is one of the key target for your up to 2040 target, 17 years. So how do you intend to address the Scope 3, and how do you aim to work with your stakeholders?
Okay, thank you, Faisal, and thank you for the question. I think that's one of the most difficult question. I think not only IOI, but I think most people or most organizations who are trying to reduce their Scope 3. You know, on the part of IOI, I think what we are looking to is to work with our supply chain. Specifically, if you look the webinar, actually we have been inviting a lot of our suppliers, and this is specifically to get our suppliers to be together with us on board to share with them the knowledge and the understanding of how we go about towards net zero, because a lot of the issues are quite complex and quite technical. And I think the main thing that I think requires is a change in the mindset of our suppliers, our scope 3. Because without our suppliers understanding the imperatives of that we are facing in terms of climate change, we will not go forward, because this is the journey that needs to be done together. So the first step, I think the challenge is to get our suppliers to be on our journey, to share with them our best practices, to share with them some of the challenges that we are facing. I think that's the first step. Once this is understood, then we can share some of the approaches that we have in dealing with some of our emission, having them understand what are the contribution in their operations towards their own emission before they can even contribute to reduce. So I think the next step is for the suppliers to understand what is the baseline, and that means understanding which part of the operation contributes towards the GHG emission. Now, I think that first step alone will take a few years, a couple of years, because it took us about 2-3 years to at least get our baseline going. So this is something that we can assist our suppliers to understand which part of the operations. Because when you guys reduce your emission, we get to benefit as well. So it's a win-win on both our side. And it is important for our suppliers to understand that going forward, not reducing their net zero, their GHG emission might affect their business, because those emissions will cost money. And this is something that I think a lot of the suppliers are still not aware, that the carbon or the GHG emission that they emit will then now contribute towards their bottom line. I mean, reducing actually their bottom line. I hope that answers a part of the question.
Thank you very much, Serena. And yeah, I mean, it's clearly we're on a journey, and we need to keep working with the supply chain partners to move on that journey and find the right incentives and mechanisms to make it a win-win for all of us. So I have a second question. Maybe I can address this to Mr. Sham from the refinery, although not specifically on the refinery, but you presented about the overall emission from the edible oil, the production, and the plantation. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on the main steps that IOI has been taken about reducing emission in the production for the oils from the plantation, particularly before they get into the mill and the refinery? Can you give us some more indicators there?
From the refinery side, we've been looking mainly at our own scope 1 and scope 2, which is our own electricity, steam, and even some of the consumables that we use. That's why I said we've also looked at doing the CPO washing, as will also be able to reduce many of the inputs that we have for the refining operation, which means you reduce the, let's say, for instance, the acids that we need to use, the bleaching earth, which all have got their, what's it called, the scope 3 carbon footprint as well. So we've actually been working on reducing that as well. The biolubricant also has an advantage because it is one of our own products, which displaces using mineral oils as well. So that's another area we've been looking at in order to address two issues. One is the issue of contamination of edible oils with mineral oils, as well as using basically a food material, which is palm oil, as the lubricant as well. Again, all targeted to also reduce the carbon footprint from our premises.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Let's move on to palm wood. I think you presented to us quite clearly about the process, the initiative that you're doing. but have you already made some estimation of the amount of carbon emission that can be avoided by utilizing the palm wood, and how much is the sequestration that you're capturing? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much for the question. We've calculated that we can sequester directly 0.93 metric tons of carbon dioxide per cubic meter of material produced. So that's a direct sequestration of operating and using the OPT. But what we haven't included in that figure, and is still very, very significant, is the amount of carbon reduction from reducing the amount of wood harvested from natural forests, okay? Or the amount of methane that's also produced during the decaying process of the oil palms. So we believe that we can sequester at least 1 metric ton of CO2 equivalent per cubic meter of material produced. So in the first year of operation, we're looking to produce about 80,000 cubic meters of material. So that roughly, obviously, will, we believe, equate to 80,000 tons of CO2. So we're looking forward to validating those figures, of course, but I think these are pretty valid estimations that we've undertaken. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Amir. You've mentioned about some of the technical approaches to reduce emission in the plantation sector. How much of this approaches are you also looking to collaborate with those in the supply chain? So, for example, smallholders or others that supply to the IOI business. Within your strategy for engagement, does that include transferring technology or approaches to the supply chain partners to help improve their yields and their efficiency?
Yep. Yes, I think we do have a program, capacity building, working with NGO to share some of the best practices and also sustainable practices, including the tool for transformation, where we share with these smallholders and also suppliers some of the best practices in terms of fertilizer and also estate management. So this is some of the program, and in addition, we also work with, like I shared earlier, with the innovation ecosystem, whereby we invite or we share some of the challenges in running the plantation in terms of the automation or using of new technologies to improve efficiency. So in a way that we get our suppliers or innovators to come on board and test their solution in our operations. I think giving you one example is on the automated FFB or fruit grading, where currently I think most of the existing practice is actually based on manual grading. So now we are testing using AI vision grading. So this will help to improve efficiency, less manual labor, and more automated, and also more accurate. So we are giving these opportunities to startups and suppliers and companies out there to work together with us to test the solution with a view to improve in terms of efficiency and also reduce emission in operation.
Thank you very much, Amir. Mr. Chong, from the oleochemical side, you mentioned that your scope 3 is 10 times higher than your scope 1 and 2. That means the emissions related to your suppliers are 10 times higher than those directly in your production. With a target setting of bringing the scope 3 also down to net zero by 2040, how does the IOI Oleochemicals aim to do this? Thank you.
Yeah, so basically in scope 3, the concentration is only on the basically on the purchase of goods, basically the oils. So for this, as I mentioned, in fact, through the years, it's well documented that the emission from per ton of CPO has been coming down dramatically from papers like from this Dr. Yannick, where it shows about 5,000 kg per ton, to now averagely, I think in the industry, we are looking at 1,000 over, good average. So we believe that, you know, the plantation side is making very good progress in best management, as well as, you know, the latest one, as I mentioned, we are looking at the palm GHG to allow flexibility to take into consideration other, you know, savings, GHG savings that could be derived from the palm industry. So that takes care of the purchased goods section. On this transportation, of course, you know that, you know, globally transportation is a major factor in the emission sector. So we believe that, you know, in time, at least the export sector, we will see bio alternative fuels being used. But of course, like I said, everything takes time. We need the so-called critical mass for the, you know, to push this sustainability agenda forward. And once this is done, then of course, but short term, what we are doing is we are improving our data accuracy. So we are zooming from using a quantis evaluator to more accurate data specific from the supplier. So with this, then we could then also work with suppliers specifically to, you know, reduce these emissions.
Thank you very much.
Can I just add up
please.
to what Chung was talking about? Just for information, majority of the greenhouse gas or emission is coming from the plantation. Even with the 60% coming from oleochemical, you know, we are working towards ensuring that we can increase our sequestration by doing reforestation and rehabilitation of our set aside conservation areas, such as our buffer and our riparian. And that further will help to take into consideration some of the issues that our suppliers are not being able to address. Of course, you know, in order for us to get net zero, they all have to be on board. But the reason why, you know, we feel quite at ease in terms of looking at addressing greenhouse gas is that a huge portion of it, if you look at the slides that I presented, came from the plantation side. And that one is where we're going to be addressed the part on the land use change, because oil palm plantation has a 25 years life cycle. And therefore, that part of the sequestration was never taken into consideration when we were looking at greenhouse gas. So that should be something that we all should look at. And, you know, suppliers of oils, we need to talk to you guys about, you know, your own best practices as well. Thank you.
So, and I think, I mean, you have set a two-stage process by 2030 to bring IOI's own emissions down to net zero. And that will also presumably that will be perhaps if that's modeled or followed by some of your other supply chain partners, then that means that the feedstock for the oleochemicals coming in for 2040 should be coming hopefully from more carbon neutral sources. And I think that will be the way to address the scope 3, given that maybe it's easier within the plantation production side to reduce the emission profile or to offset in some ways. So I think that it's the right strategy of having the two-stage, and then you're demonstrating by 2030 how to do it for the feedstock, and then by 2040 bring all your partners on board. But hopefully now we have, through this process, engaged a number of partners and stakeholders from the supply chain. I've still got more questions coming in, but as mentioned earlier, we don't have so much time. I can answer ask one or two more questions, then I think we will have to wrap up. So it's a question here for palm wood. So how much energy is needed in the production process to turn the palm trunks into the fiber board or the other materials? And how does that compare to taking a similar product from the wood, the normal wood or timber industry? Is it more or less efficient in that process?
Okay, thank you very much again for that question. We hope that we're in a sweet zone when we're producing palm wood. If we look at some of the alternatives to palm wood, such as medium density fiberboard and particle board, or even other solid timbers, when we design palm wood, we try to make sure that we designed in energy efficiency, not any use of any formaldehydes or other chemicals, to try to make this product a really natural, sustainable, environmentally friendly product. So to answer the questions directly, we're not creating fibers, okay, and then reconstituting them like they do in MDF and fiberboard. So we don't have large refining machines. We don't have large flakers or size reduction machines. We're basically sawing the palm wood, typically like normal timbers, but the palm wood is softer than normal timbers, so the energy consumption is less. If we compare it to MDF and particle board, we believe that we're using only about 15% of the energy consumption for these types of products. Also, there's no added formaldehyde. So these products are NAF, or formaldehyde-free products. And then when it comes to solid timbers, the advantage we have there is that the palm is quite homogeneous. So our recovery rates are in the region of about 70 to 80%, whereas recovery rate from a normal timber can be only 60 or 70% at best. When we designed our energy plant, we designed our energy plant to be 1/3 of the energy, is a biomass energy plant, but we don't use an ID fan. So the energy consumption to run the biomass energy plant is only about 1/3 of a typical cogeneration boiler. So we have a number of advantages. We reckon that our energy consumption is only 1/3 of producing a traditional timber. So hopefully we can turn that into a sweet spot for the production of palm wood. Thank you.
Okay, that really sounds like a potential game changer and really best practice example for circular economy. So I think hopefully this will be one of the factors that can really make a difference, not only in IOI, but more broadly across the palm oil sector to move the palm oil sector much towards, as a whole, towards carbon neutrality, which I think will be a big win for the sector as a whole. So I think just before the wrap up, just one more question which has been raised. We've talked about quite the ambitious process, complicated process with many steps and many players. So what measures are being put in place by IOI to ensure transparency and avoid accusation of greenwashing? Is there going to be any independent checking or auditing, or what other processes is IOI considering?
Okay, so I'll take that up. So that's a very, very important question because one of our pledges is no greenwashing. The first thing is that, as you know, we are committed to SBTi. And that means, as Datuk Lee has mentioned, it would have to be verified. Now, we are all RSPO member. So all our greenhouse gas emission are being audited by a third party under RSPO. And downstream, where oleochemical and refineries are concerned, they're going towards 14064, sorry. And this is also going to be verified. That means the emissions are going to be verified. So all this will be transparently reported in our annual sustainability report. And the disclosure of this will be in line with TCFD, as well as in line with GRI reporting and going forward under ISSB. So you can see that when it comes to the reporting part, it is going to be transparently shared. When it comes to the verification, all our numbers are being verified by third party going forward. At least I know that for the refineries and the oleochemical, they are on the process of being that. But definitely for the plantation side, all numbers are being verified. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Serena. Maybe we can bring the session to a close. So if I can just summarize just briefly what has been the focus of the panel. So we have really, through the panel, been able to hear much more about the journey that IOI has embarked upon towards net zero by 2040. This is an ambitious journey, but a necessary journey. I think everyone listening, everyone worldwide knows the great severity of greenhouse gas emissions and the global climate change that is linked to that, and that humanity cannot survive in the future if we do not all collectively take action. And we cannot be waiting for someone else to take action. No one is going to save the planet for us. As the French president said before, we have no planet B. We don't have alternative if we screw up. So we have to really work together and to achieve the vision of reducing collectively greenhouse gas emissions. IOI has made a very important step towards it. They have set an ambitious goal of getting to carbon neutrality by 2040. That is in line with the global target to try to peak emissions globally by 2030 and draw down near to zero afterwards for the planet. And by setting a 2040 target that is ahead of the curve anyway, so IOI and its supply chain would effectively become leaders in the region or in the world. And I think that is also very important that IOI maintains that leadership role and can inspire other organizations in the country and the region and internationally. I'd just like to end us by a little quotation from the IPCC report, which was released yesterday. And that says, urgent action can secure a livable future for all. The solution lies in climate resilient developing integrated measures to both adaptation to climate change and linking those with measures to reduce or avoid greenhouse gas emissions in a way that provides wider benefits. And I think this journey towards net zero by 2040 is exactly that. It is reducing greenhouse gas emission, but doing it in a way with multiple parties on board and trying to bring value-added products, value-added benefits to all, and that we, through the process, can also adapt to a changing planet. And hopefully, if we all work together, it is still a livable planet that we have in 2040 and beyond. With that, thank you again for everyone online and here in the audience. And thank you all to the panel members for contributing. And thank you in advance to all of you for your efforts over the coming 17 years to get IOI and its supply chain to carbon neutral. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Faisal, for a wonderful wrap up. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our panel discussions on IOI's pathway to net zero. I would like to thank once again to our moderator, Mr. Faisal, and our panelists. Once again, I would like to say thank you for all the participants who have joined this panel discussion. Thank you and have a pleasant day ahead.